Like most photographers, I know that the colour of light changes through the day. In the middle of the day it's quite blue, and in the evening it's more red, warmer. It's not something I normally worry about because my camera's auto white balance function does a good job of making sure the colours still look natural at different times of the day. But what happens under artificial light? Well, old-fashioned tungsten bulbs give a very red light, and halogens are a bit more like daylight, but they're still very red. But again, the automatic white balance does a reasonable job of correcting for this, and the colours in the pictures don't look too bad. When it comes to low energy bulbs, I've noticed some weird effects. Sometimes the colours just don't look right, sometimes there is an obvious colour cast to the picture. The sort of bulbs I'm talking about here are compact fluorescents, even the old style long tube fluorescents, and of course the new LED bulbs. So I thought I'd try and work out what was going on and do a bit of a scientific investigation. I wanted to find out what makes sunlight better at rendering colours than, say, low energy light bulbs. Is it just sunlight's what we're used to? Well, turns out that's not the case. Think of a rainbow. A rainbow isn't just a pretty sight, it's actually a spectrographic analysis of sunlight. In other words, the sunlight is being split up into its constituent parts so that we can see them separately. When a child draws a rainbow, it only contains a handful of colours. But in reality, a rainbow contains an infinite number of colours, a continuous spectrum of all the colours that the human eye can see. So, could we make our own rainbows using artificial light and see if they look any different? Real rainbows are created by water droplets in the atmosphere, and that's quite tricky to replicate at home. But there is an alternative method. So here you can see that I've got my own precision measuring instrument. Yep, it's a DVD. I didn't need to break it in half, that's another story. But as I point it towards the sun and angle it backwards and forwards, you can see that the colours change, and I'm actually seeing the spectrum of the sunlight as I change the angle of the DVD by very small amounts. It's actually slightly clearer with the, or more obvious with the camera slightly defocused, because you get a nice wide band. So there I'm at the red and slowly moving it through to the orange and then the yellow and the green, and if we keep going past the green we should find some blue and some violet, and yep, there we go. So it's a bit tricky, but it can be done, and everybody's got an old DVD lying around, so there's your measuring equipment. For my next experiment I've got two white LEDs just hooked up to a bench power supply. Although they both look pretty similar, they are in fact different, but they're both white LEDs and they look white to the naked eye. And I'm going to try my DVD trick on them. So turn the lights out, so I've just got the LED switched on. We can clearly see one bar from each LED nicely reflected. And so I'm just going to waggle the DVD backwards and forwards and look at the spectra from the two LEDs. The greens and turquoises. And as we go through to the yellow, you can see the one on the right fades out a bit. And then as we get through to the reds, there seems to be more red in the right hand one, a bit less in the left. Let's go back again. Yep, definitely some missing yellow, and then we're into the greens and going through to the blues. I'm going to defocus the camera a bit and see whether that makes it clearer. A bit of a gap in the yellow as we saw before, and also the left hand one looks like it's got a bit less turquoise in it. There's a gap in the sort of turquoise end of the spectrum. So I wondered how objects would look when they were photographed under these two different LEDs. So I tried a few things out, and most of the objects that I photographed looked pretty much the same under the two LEDs. But one object looked completely different, and here it is. This first photo looks more or less the same as it looks under daylight. But look at this under the other LED. The whites are still white, but all the yellowy orange has gone, and the reds are much stronger, which actually ties up with what we saw analysing the spectrum with our DVD. So we can see that each LED is outputting light with different spectral components, and my camera's white balance can't compensate for the differences, so the pictures look different. But to my eyes, the light from both looks identical. So what's going on? I'm going to try and investigate a bit further in part 2.